Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to keep this one solo today, and we've had a lot of confusion with these court cases. We've had a lot that is going on, so I'll be sure to take a lot of today's podcast, the second segment, to sort of catch you up to speed if you've been missing out on what we've all been seeing here in college basketball over the last few weeks, because it has been a lot. We're going to get you all covered there, and we have seen a few moves in college basketball. A few guys returning to where they came. We're going to recap those two. We saw Florida Nashville get a nice ad, and I'll be talking about this as well. I do think that we're going to be seeing a lot of these mid-major teams actually getting a nice boost from all these fifth-year guys returning, because if you take a look at the South Carolina case, that's the one that's involving Malik Renew. Outside of him, a lot of these guys are guys that were at the mid-major level last season, so I do think that's going to be very impactful for those teams. As per usual, please do send in any Twitter/X questions they have. You have one or two ways to be able to fire those in, obviously, via the old Twitter/X at @GUnit_D1. Do keep in mind that the letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way, that is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And per usual, I do beg with you, do plead with you, please do send in these Twitter/X questions. Lets me know what you want to hear to get you guys set for the upcoming season, and I do want this to be the greatest college basketball season of all time, so please do continue to keep me abreast of what you want to be hearing there, and I am going to do my best to be able to deliver there. And along with that, conference previews are going to be continuing as well. Big reason why I'm doing a little bit of a wraparound podcast, just recapping what we've all been seeing over the last few weeks, is that I do plan on doing the Mountain West Conference preview tomorrow. If I don't get it up tomorrow, it'll probably be up sometime later on during the weekend, early next week, and then I'll be into the Patriot League. From there, we get into the S's, the Southland, the SoCon. I always have a lot of fun with those conference previews as well, so continuing on with all of those, and we're going to have great guests on all throughout the offseason. Very rare that we have a guest-free podcast. Just everyone was booked up on a Friday. We've got football coming back into our lives as well, and I do want to make sure that I be as thorough as humanly possible, because there's a lot of chaos as right now happening in college basketball as well, so this will be a good time to be able to take a breath, relax, and be able to reload a little bit as well. And how about if we take a look at the moves, first things first, that we've seen in college basketball here recently. This one was from a few days ago, but I failed to mention this on the podcast, the fact that Antoine Woolfolk, he's going to be back at Miami of Ohio. He didn't have like super rambunctious numbers, but he was one of their top rebounders for a team that they were outside the top 320 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, so they really needed a big man down low. 9.5 points, 5.3 boards, guy that was able to shoot about 32.4% from three-point range as well. No question about it. It is a Miami team that I think it's going to take a little bit of setback from last year. We're not going to be seeing them have an undefeated season, but I think that they're going to be right there with those top teams. Like I picked Toledo number 1, Akron number 2, and then Miami of Ohio number 3, Kent State at number 4. I still think that those are very clearly the top 4 teams in the conference. Now for Kent State, they were able to upgrade their backcourt a little bit here in the last few days, so that's going to be able to help them out quite a bit with Christian Henry coming back in the fold for Miami of Ohio. They get an upgrade as well. I'm still really feeling bullish about Toledo and all the guys that they bring back, but I think that that's going to be a really interesting race, because those top 4 teams, I think it's going to be neck and neck between them, and I do think that the MAC is getting a lot more depth. That very much helps out Miami of Ohio, and it's been a big last week or two here for West Virginia. Now, for West Virginia, they do have Trayson Eaglestaff currently in the transfer portal. He could still come back to West Virginia. I'm sort of doubting that, but you know what? They have signed a guy or two in terms of these fifth-year guys, and now they are going to be bringing back Brendan Lorient. For Lorient, he's a guy that was with Rush Hodge when he was over at North Texas, so he's got a lot of familiarity with the system. He was one of the top players for West Virginia last year. 12 points, 5 boards, shot about 36% from three-point range, and with West Virginia losing a lot of those guys in the backcourt from a season ago, like Hunter Huff and company, they did need a little bit more camaraderie and just guys in general that were a part of that nice crown run from a season ago. I do think that when a team like a West Virginia makes a run in the non-NCAA tournament, smaller tournaments like the NIT, what have you, I do think that that really does help out for the next season, and losing guys like Hunter Huff and company, that does sting a little bit, but you're bringing Finley Bizjack, who I'm very bullish on. I think that Martin Somerville, after he had a solid second half of the season over at Florida State, is a guy that's going to be able to take off a little bit. Mohamed Siala is going to be able to help them out down low. They bring in a 7-footer in Mohamed Sanai. Hopefully I got that correct. A little bit of an international man, a mystery big man who should be able to help out as well. I'm all of a sudden starting to feel a little bit more bullish on West Virginia, and really the entire Big 12 has had themselves a nice few weeks, as Texas Tech, they have been probably the biggest winners of everything that we've been seeing with these fifth-year guys. For Houston, they bring a nice little ancillary piece in Chendall Weaver, never really a great scorer, but he very much fits the system. We know with Cincinnati bringing in MJ Collins, he could arguably be their best player this season. For Arizona, they were able to bring in a guy or two as well, so I do think that the Big 12 is really having themselves a nice few weeks. Would like to see Kansas get in on the mix. I know that they've been rumored to be having some connections with Alfred Worrell, who's a double-figure scorer over at Morgan State, so we need to be checking in on that, but the Big 12 has certainly been one of those conferences that has been able to upgrade. And then when it comes to Conference USA, haven't seen a lot of them recently, but they were able to get a nice ad on Friday with Florida National, a team that I'm not necessarily the most bullish on, but they've got a new coaching staff, and Tijan Sanai. He was over at Weber State last year. He was absolutely tremendous for them. He is going to be adding on over there. Now, do I think that he's going to be building off the numbers that he had over at Weber State a season ago? I think that that would be a little bit far-fetched. He was averaging 17.5 points, 4.3 assists per game, shot 35% from three. If I'm not mistaken, he was a USC commit a little bit ago, and I know that he played at the non-Division I ranks as well, but this is a big upgrade for a Florida National team that they're getting down to new coaching sort of staff. They're going to be in transition a little bit with regards to that style out there in Conference USA. It has really been Liberty along with Western Kentucky that have run things over the last few years. We saw Kennesaw State have a nice rise up last season, and Florida National, I don't think is going to be catching up with those guys, but bringing in Sinai, that's a good place to be able to start. They also bring in Ramon Seals. I was talking about Kennesaw State, the team that made the NCAA tournament last year. He's going to be helping this team out down low, as last few seasons they were a team that was very weak down low. It felt like they could really use that just main guy that could be able to help, be able to facilitate a little bit, because they were going to be leaning on, prior to this news, Corey Culker to be carrying the mail a lot for this team. And Culker, I think, is going to be very good. But that said, he was a guy that was averaging about 8 points per game on 32.5% three-point shooting over at East Carolina. It was an East Carolina offense that was poor, to say the least, and now you've got a guy that had some success over at Weber State. So big moves being made there. And coming up next, we still have a lot of, shall we say, chaos happening in college basketball. There's a lot of outstanding court cases, and we've seen a lot of moves happen over the last few weeks. We'll give you guys a little bit of a roundup of that on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, and now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word, .com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN, because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is nice this time of year that we've been getting so much news in college basketball, because typically this is one of the slowest times of year, and I do feel like it's my responsibility to be rounding up a little bit of this, because typically we're in our way too early top 25 mode. We're taking a look at all these finalized rosters. We are not having much of that right now because we still have a bunch of outstanding court cases as well. So we'll run through this right about now. The biggest one is the California case. This is a one that is still very much outstanding, and this is one where we are still waiting to see what is going to be happening because Donovan Dent, he is the biggest name that is going to be out there in it, and for Donovan Dent, he's obviously been linked to Gonzaga so much, but that said, he's not the only big name that is out there, as you've got Jackson Kaler, who is also another one of those guys, Duke Brennan, who was a really good scorer over at Villanova last year. He's a part of this as well, and these guys are all waiting to see if they're going to be able to get eligibility. We saw Xavion Lee join that court case as well, and in the list of guys, it is now north of 20 names, and there's even some, shall we say, ancillary guys that are out there in this one as well that I think are going to be very impactful because I mentioned some of the bigger names out there because with like a Duke Brennan, I know that he's been linked to Oregon even though they already signed Malik Ewan. You've still got the likes of an Aiden Mahaney, who I still remember a few years ago when he was over at St. Mary's. He was such a fantastic player. Isaiah Carr is a true 7-footer that can help out a team. Nick Townsend was shooting over 40% from 3 for Yale. He was really good there. Kendall Blue is involved in this. You've got the Diaz-Graham brothers, who they never really panned out. Javon Porter, I know that he was a part of it. He was allowed to be able to transfer within the state, and he already landed at Loyola Marymount. Like, if Donovan Dent wanted to, he could go back to UCLA right now, but that said, he's looking to go outside the state. Same goes for Brennan. It feels like that's the same for Jackson Kaler, so that's what these guys are waiting on. Jordan Pope as well, because with the injunction that happened over at Colorado a few weeks ago, if you entered in the transfer portal, which some of these guys already did, they're all good to go, signed, sealed, delivered. Like Braden Carrington is another one of these guys that is in the California case, and I know that he's been showing up at a lot of Wisconsin practices. If things go their way with the California case, he's most likely going to be heading back to becoming a member of the Wisconsin Badgers, and we are seeing a few guys coming back to where they came. I mentioned it in the last segment, the fact that you've got that with Antoine Woolfolk heading back to Miami of Ohio, Brandon Lorient for West Virginia. We saw a day or two ago as well the fact that it's going to be a good ad for Duquesne, the fact that they get back their top scorer in Terrence Gunyard, a guy that they typically would not be able to keep, so that's huge. And additionally, for that California case, Xavion Lee, he's now a part of that as well, a guy that was a double-figure scorer when he was over at Florida, and we know how explosive he was when he was playing over at Princeton as well, so that is something that I'm going to be very much keeping on my radar. And then additionally, we've seen a few other names pop up because these guys like Mo Odom, Trey Hulliman, they have added their name to a few court cases. I believe that this was the California case that they were added to. I'm trying to keep everything straight myself, so if you're having a little bit of a tough time with it, have no fear, I am as well. But that said, the one thing I do know, and I'm not someone that went to school for justice, anything with regards to like law or anything like that. I went to school for radio, TV, film, but I do know that the NCAA is the Washington Generals of the court system, so they're most likely not going to be successful. Elijah Saunders is now in on this. He was a guy that was over at Maryland last year, 2 years ago, very rock solid for San Diego State. I think that he was on that title team that was able to make that run. Mo Odom was a double-figure scorer and leader assist over at Arizona State last year. Team could certainly utilize him. Scotty Washington was a double-figure scorer at the mid-major ranks. Chisholm Okpara was a solid player over at Stanford last year. Kamani Hamilton is a guy that's going to be able to help out a team. Malik Arrington, I mean, you just go down the list. JJ Starling is now in on this. I know that he was a little bit of a flopperoonie in comparison to his hype coming out of high school, but that's a guy that could certainly help you out. Lance Waddles is a guy that could help you out. I remember him over at Omaha a few seasons ago. Desmond Claude, nice double-figure score. Like, you go down the list, there are so many guys that are out there that could really help out a team, so this is going to be very impactful. I mentioned this one in the first segment, the Malik Renew case, as I'm going to be calling it, because he is the main guy that is going to be in on this. But for the South Carolina case, you've got a few more mid-major guys that are in on this. Owen Aquino over at High Point. You've got a lot of UNC Wilmington guys that are going to be in on this. Noah Ross and Christian May from Wilmington, also from High Point. Vincent Brady II. Kieran Boyd, along with another guy from Wichita State in Keenan Giles. They were two big parts of the team last year. They are in on this case. I mentioned Florida National, them getting a nice pickup in Tajai Sinai. Britt Harris, he's another guy that's in on this. So you've got a lot of these court cases that are just swirling around right now. And I know that we were talking about this with one of our good friends. Rocco Miller does such great work over at Bracketeer.org. And it feels like it's inevitable that the NCAA is going to be losing these court cases. But it feels like they want to show the teams that did it the right way. They did the roster building in like April, May, what have you, that they're not going to just let these guys go willy-nilly all over them, even though they know that that is certainly going to be the case. They're going to try to make things as laborious as humanly possible for these guys that are trying to be able to get to fifth year. And I think that that's sort of where we're at, and pretty much anyone that sues the NCAA is probably going to be successful. The question is the roster spots. Who all has one or two roster spots remaining? Are these guys going to be able to make more money playing college basketball rather than selling cars, rather than taking a desk job, what have you? And maybe these guys are considering going overseas. Is the money here in the United States in college basketball a little bit better than what you'd be able to get overseas as well? So there's a lot that is being weighed out there. There's a lot that is just happening in college basketball in general, and we are starting to see more and more of these guys be able to latch on. I do think that the biggest piece was Seth Trimble a few days ago going on over to Louisville, and I think he's going to be a guy that immediately is going to be able to pop off, have a double-figure scoring season just like he did over at North Carolina last year. And then in terms of some of the other big names that we've seen, MJ Collins, I mentioned him, double-figure score over at Utah State. He follows Jared Calhoun all over to Cincinnati, so that's big. And then in terms of a few other guys that just stayed where they were, Philip Borovichinen, the top rebounder from Xavier, he returns to where he came as well. That was absolutely massive for them, in my opinion. And then you had Josh Reed. I failed to mention him a few days ago. I know that our good friend Rocco Miller, he cut me straight. He was able to mention this one. He's going to be heading on over to Penn State. Now, is Penn State going to be having a good season? Probably not, but I mean, he was a guy that was averaging 11.5 points per game for a team that just didn't have a lot going their way. He was able to give the team 4 boards, a steal, shot 37% from three-point range. Big for a Penn State team that they need every little bit of help that they can humanly get. So that was good news for them. Obviously, LSU, we're going to be seeing what they do moving forward because they signed Sky Clark, double-figure scorer from UCLA a season ago, but still very much in limbo. Mentioned that Texas Tech, in my opinion, has been the biggest winners of this entire system. Bringing back Darion Williams, who was such a big part of that Elite Eight team 2 seasons ago, is massive. And then additionally, you bring in JaMychal Stillwell because we just don't know where JT Toppin is going to be for this upcoming season, if he's going to be able to play the full season, half a season, what have you. So that's another one that I think is huge. And then I failed to mention that Oklahoma as well. They are bringing in Trey Campbell. This is another one. Like, I mean, if these are slipping by you guys, yeah, they're slipping by me as well, because we are seeing more and more news by the day with Trey Campbell. He was a very nice, rock-solid scorer when he was over at Northern Iowa last year. Put in for the team 13.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest, and was a 34.5% three-point shooter. That means that Oklahoma has 2 guys on the board that were fifth-year guys because they also signed on BJ Turn-It-Up-Edwards, who was a nice double-figure scorer over at SMU a season ago. That'll help out a guy in Xavier Brown, who he had a really good running mate last year in Nigel Pack. No longer are they going to be able to pack it in with Nigel Pack. Really needed some help out there. They were able to get him some help. And Sam Alexis, another guy that's staying over at Indiana. Didn't have the greatest year last year, but a guy that I remember when he was over at Chattanooga was really good at the non-Division I ranks. So we're trying to keep everything straight for you. We've got a lot of court cases that are continuing on. I'm going to be recapping it day in and day out for you guys. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way, that is find an Apple Podcast review. If you do rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. We're going to be getting you guys more conference preview podcasts here in the coming days, coming weeks, so have no fear there. I've been slowing down a little bit with all these court cases, with just all the hoopla happening in college basketball in general. Typically in mid-August, things are very, very dead, and things have been anything but dead here this season, so that's been interesting to say the least. The Mountain West is going to be up next, then we're going to be getting into the Patriot League, and then the conferences that start with an S, and then as per usual, once we get back in season, picks and analysis on every single single game, every single day. I appreciate you guys tuning in, putting up with all the hoopla, all the madness that we're seeing with these court cases. You're going to be getting more of it, but we're going to do our best to be able to decipher it, to be able to make this the greatest college basketball season of all time. And it's like I always say, the work that we put in the offseason, it leads to the winners during the season. So I appreciate you tuning in today. I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.